What's up, Internet? Welcome to Fiction Forge, the show that teaches you a new power every week.
Probably.
In our last episode, we showed you how to make your own paper clay.
And in this episode, we're going to show you a few techniques for sculpting with it.
A plant guardian is something we came up with that'll really make your plant stand out.
All you need to do is choose a guardian and a suitable plant, and you're ready to get started.
Here is the big guy from our last episode.
We referenced from a bunch of great art online to find characteristics that matched our plant creature theme.
Then I merged all the bits we liked into a prototype sketch.
Here are 8 steps we used from this point to make it a reality.
First, we made the negative space for the plants to live in out of some aluminium foil. We also used some steel wire to add support for the limbs, kinda like its bones.
And then it was a lengthy process of covering the frame in paper clay.
Allowing to dry to create a rigid base to sculpt off of.
Removing the aluminium foil.
Sculpting the fine detail, adding texture, and setting incorporated objects.
Allow details to dry.
Adding some weatherproofing and some color.
And finally, filling it with soil and planting.
Here are a few things to keep in mind when picking your plant and your guardian.
Will it be indoors or outdoors? Outdoor guardians need a little more waterproofing. If it's indoors, make sure your plant will get enough light and excess water has some place to run off.
Make sure the body of the guardian has enough space to house the soil and the plant.
Make sure your guardian will be stable enough to support itself.
Keep in mind the size the plant will grow to and the level of care it will need.
And try to find a plant that matches the aesthetic you want to go for with your guardian.
Let's make one together so you can get the hang of it. This one is inspired by Equal Arvalis's version of a Bulbasaur from Pokemon. See the description for a link to their DeviantArt page.
We think a small succulent like an aloe will be happy and look great inside.
Now let's get started and make a plant guardian.
We've worked out how large we want it to be, so now we can form the basic shape with aluminium foil.
Make sure not to compress the foil too much, or it'll be very difficult to remove later.
You can use wire to give strength to limbs, and attach foil to build up the form, but for this guy, just the foil and the legs should be strong enough.
We then mold the paper clay around the foil base. The less fine putty is perfect for this kind of job, because not too much detail is needed yet.
Remember to make an opening somewhere to remove the foil and insert the plant when it's dry.
We can now pop it in the oven or hit it with a hairdryer to speed up the drying process.
When it's solid, we can refine the shape a bit so it more closely resembles the thing we're making.
Alright, cool. So we're going to harvest a few of these nice spikes off of this cactus. Because sculpting consistent spikes can be quite challenging, especially trying to get them all the same shape and size. So we're just going to give ourselves a little bit of a head start and just harvest a few straight off this cactus.
All kinds of things from nature can be added to achieve different effects. For instance, thorns make awesome horns or teeth, and there are so many shapes and sizes if you have a look around. Pop the thorns into the wet clay to create sockets for later.
Now is a good time to make sockets for the marble eyes to sit in.
Some pliers and a twisting motion are good for getting rid of the tin foil inside. This swirly marble makes a particularly effective reptilian eye. Beads and buttons can also be effective for this. I find a bit of wire bent to shape is often a great way to sculpt details and add texture.
Now use a bit more clay to lock the eyes and horns into position.
And then we repeat the process for the tail spikes. Now we stick our improvised teeth into the mouth with a bit of wood glue.
We can add some ridges to the front and back to create a shell for him.
Pinching the edges of the shell to create some unevenness adds a bit of character. Then I built up a second ridge and connected the raised bits with some ridges. I made a few different sized wire loops to add some diversity to the scales.
Once again, as you can see, a bit of bent wire gets the job done. Now we repeat the process with the wire loops on the rest of his exposed skin to create the rest of his scales.
Once it's dry, you can refine the shape a bit with some sandpaper.
For this guy, the legs make perfect drainage holes.
I used a bit of black acrylic paint to waterproof the inside. A couple coats is recommended as this is important.
Now you can paint a pattern to later cover with the translucent paint.
We find adding a bit of food coloring into some wood glue creates a very vibrant translucent paint. You get great results and it's definitely worth trying out. Notice how the areas that were left white are especially vibrant under the translucent paint.
The blistering caused by scorching the wet wood glue creates some very realistic organic textures.
Now it's time to cover the rest of his body in a green acrylic base coat.
And then dry brush over the scales, toes and inside the mouth with some white acrylic to accentuate them under the translucent paint. Repeat the process with the wood glue and blowtorch on the toes, horns and teeth to give them a realistic, weathered appearance. Then we cover the entire outer surface with a layer of water-based glaze coat. And once that's dry, it's finally time to fill it with some potting soil and add our living component.
Ah, majestic.
Gotcha. How did you find out about this? You must have seen us on his proddy decks.
What the fuck?
No, bro, we got your dog.
I know, bro. Got my freaking dog.
You can't do that. You can't take your dog.
Where you going with my dog?
Get him.
That's all for this episode. We hope you enjoyed it and maybe learned a few things too. Join us next time and we'll show you a few cool ways to use silicone in your projects.
Let us know in the comments below what you thought of this episode, and what you would like to see us do in the future.
We would love to see any Guardians you guys create, so please hit us up on our social. Hope to see you around the Forge in the future.
And remember,
Wizards only, fools. Keep it tight.